It is a thought, probably a depressing thought, but heavy in the chest for sure. All around me becomes gloomy and grey all of a sudden. It makes you feel overwhelmed and nihilistic. It's rather a very depressing thought. But there should be some reason or context behind such thought. It cannot come out of nowhere. I think I know what it is. It's the fear, or it might be loneliness. It's because you don't have like minded people around you, people who have same ideals and concerned about the same things as you. You haven't met a single person who is empathetic as much as you expect them to be. Because, everybody is empathetic, but it depends on who they choose to be empathetic on and at what amount. But when you see around you, it's rather hate you only see. Hate has become the default ideology of the people. When you talk about politics around people, you have to argue in favor of being empathetic of people, or certainly on specific groups of people. Peoples who are in minority in a social and political landscape, people who have been oppressed historically. And you have to do that instead of speaking of social issues that affects people's material conditions. It is quite, no, it is very exhausting to educate or argue around such people. In politics, they call them fascists, but they seem people to me, or rather, a people who are monsters inside, but they portray themselves as people. And I think that is the most dangerous part. Why am I saying that? Am I drowned in the radical thought of mine, failing to recognize that hating is a normal human nature? Definitely no. I'm observing the fact that you can't be called a person with heart if you fail to recognize the struggle of your fellow human being. You and him being the same social class and spewing hate on them just because they subscribe to different social belief or they are from other ethnicity, it doesn't make sense. People are so downtrodden in the machines of neoliberal economy and conservative politics that they have forgotten to care about their material conditions. They think that a minority community and coincidentally who are powerless and also the same class of theirs are responsible for every socio-political problem that people face. But it's a different variety of fascism that is brewing in this part of the world, the part of the world that no one cares to even know about, specifically the Westerners and the Western media. All they know is mysterious godmen, scary rituals, communists, and meditation. They call this Eastern world, the uncivilized world, which was colonized by these Western powers because they were concerned about our civility. The same Western powers gave a recipe for fascism to these parts of the world. And at the same time, they were fighting against a inconvenient or non-cooperating fascist in their part of the world. Why? Because they already saw how this formula works in the West. Why did they give a recipe for fascism when they themselves were fighting against such forces in their part of the world? Why is that the case? Because they already saw how this formula works in the West. If it was mixed with some other worked out formula in the eastern parts before, which involved creating conflicts to maintain power, it's called divide and rule, the result of colonialism, it would make a crazy concoction called neo-colonialism. That West was, instead of doing that here as before, they planned to do it in a long distance relationship with the help of corporate warlords and some corrupt or fascist leaders. For this plan of theirs, fascism was pretty effective. It's like being a fascist in a inter-country scale, targeting the powerless countries to benefit themselves. No, not their people, themselves. I might be wrong. Not only themselves, them and their corporates. They called it neoliberalism. That's what the byproduct was of post colonialism and Cold War. It worked out pretty well, if you ask me. Coming back to my country, because of these crazy concoction, or call it a cocktail of exploitative economic system and corrupt hate spitting governments, the people here are quite ignorant of how politics works. They are blindfolded by false truths and bigotry against a community that happen to be of other religious belief. The colonial Western power I mentioned before discovered its effectiveness when they partitioned a part of the mainland into two differently administered parts on the basis of religion in 1905. Later, they did the same thing in the other part of the country. The difference was that now it was not administered by them, but by two newly formed states, one on the basis of religion and the other a state on secular values, as they say, which led to 20 million displacements and 2 million deaths, creating religious minority in both countries, leading to a political landscape of hate on the people in religious minority in both the countries. For better understanding, when someone talks in favor of a religious minority in their country, the conservatives yell to go to that other country in anger or perhaps frustration. Imagine talking in favor of the people in that other country. Well, I did when I was arguing that how the secular state has pulled out a America like intervention on the people of that other nation. Or for the uncivilized Easterners, how the state pulled out a Sri Lanka. Or for a present parallel, the state pulled out a Israel on this other nation. I was persecuted. Some stopped talking with me, and some avoided talking politics around me. Well, I won't complain them. I understand that it is never easy to realize that your state is a perpetrator of violence on other sovereign nations, or thinking that your freedom comes at a cost of death of other individuals who are less privileged. In fact, I was quite disturbed for some number of days. What troubles me more is the fact that the liberal opposition was also on board with the shit show. The environment was quite volatile, emotional, and hate filled. Under such environment, with quite rational views of mine, imagine the persecution. These made me really think to stop talking about these topics voluntarily, or in other words, it's called censoring yourself. The most eye opening of all is that how the liberals were also on board with the fascists. This made me realize that how fascist ideology as a whole works and how liberalism is an indistinguishable part of the whole project of fascism. Seeing the whole world, what is the solution? The ideology that I believe rational and consistent with its worldview isn't mainstream. Understandably, because you doesn't need to be well read to be a liberal or a conservative or even a fascist. It really needs so much effort and hours of reading to arrive at the views of mine. And moreover that, educating people is damn hard, not my field of course. Then where is that column of hope that should hold me up? People, specifically the working class, who make up the majority of the population, I expect them to be at least aware of all their material conditions. But fascism and neoliberalism and Western powers are so effective in their cause. Neoliberalism fucks up the economy of the masses, and fascism reigns over their fucked up lives, pointing its finger over other small groups of people whose conditions are even worse because of historic persecution, oppression, and marginalization. On the other hand, such political and economical landscape creating a other group of ideologically persecuted and oppressed group of people of my worldview. If I bring it up, people of my worldview were killed in several instances in world history. One being before the Holocaust in the Nazi Germany by the Nazis, not because of these people of similar worldview of mine were Jews, but just because of their worldview. Ignorance is really a bliss, if you ask me. I was happy before reading or hearing about those bearded gay homies and this anti Semite mofo. Fun fact, just so you know, that most known of these gay couples who these other people of my worldview follow, including the anti Semite mofo I mentioned, was born a Jew. Even after reading about the ever changing political systems and class struggles, if I'm optimistic enough to believe about the theory that capitalism will be overthrown by socialism, the question makes me move towards pessimism. That still, how much time do we still have? Will it be before climate change or when it starts fucking up the global south, or will it be after that? Will it be before people of the global south become climate refugees, or will it be after that? The uncertainty of the future fogs up my brain. The thought makes my chest heavy and makes me feel pessimistic and lose hope in humanity and intelligentsia of the masses. Before commenting or suggesting me to join an organization or a union, let me again tell you that the worldview of mine is not mainstream. In fact, if you express them, you would be called a delusional moron and would be said to move on from the utopian ideology, or even worse, you would be called a T word or even get arrested for that. You cannot talk it out loud because the states around these parts is slowly but steadily transitioning into a fascist state, obviously with the support of Western powers and also beside a communist regime. Is it all me or even you are experiencing some kind of inter reincarnation deja vu that is happening? Is it just me or even you are experiencing a historical deja vu that is happening? I don't know, but all I can say for sure is that I'm surrounded by fascism in art, culture, films, politics, liberals who have lost their pattern seeking abilities, communists who have lost their power in political landscape, warmongering population, colonialism, workers getting stomped by neoliberal policies, corporates funding the fascist regime, or I would say regimes. Everywhere all I see is fascism and the same fucking patterns. Not just here, it is same all around the world. It's a 1984 like situation, surely not exaggerating. I believe there is no one like myself in at least 10-kilometer radius. Well, that was an exaggeration, but I believe you get me. It has been very exhausting lately, so that's why I've started investing more time in playing more games. And also regarding this channel, I would be making more political diaries like this. So hang on. I believe this would be a space for my trauma slash stress dump. Thank you for watching.